Hey, this is Mike Napierala here with Peak Performance Physical Therapy and Sports Training, and we are really fortunate today to be interviewing a good friend of ours, Iris Zimmermann, who is one of Rochester's own very elite athletes who has competed in the 2000 Olympics and is a world champion fencer. And we're just really blessed here to spend some time with Iris, just picking her brain and her heart about fencing, the work she's doing at the club here, and we just felt like since it's the Olympic season here and they're about to get started soon, that it would be really pertinent for our viewers, for Peak Performance website and newsletters, to peek into some of Iris's experiences. So, Iris, I really thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm very glad to.
And we've had some interesting talks already, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the interest that you've got for these. So you are one of Rochester's elite athletes. You've been to the Olympics. You've been a world champion fencer. When did you first really process the idea that you either wanted to or actually could actually be an Olympian for the United States?
I was fortunate enough, I think, when you're the youngest sibling or younger sibling, it's much easier for you because the path is already laid. And Felicia was, my sister, was and is 5 years older than me. So when I started at 6 years old, she's already at 11 doing very well in fencing. And I think she, at some point at 12 or 13, knew that she would make some sort of Olympic team on the way. In 1992, she was actually one of the alternates, so at a very young age. So, you know, I saw that, and I saw possibility for myself. Actually, I saw no other route. Between 6 and 10 years old, you do fencing for fun. But then at 10, I think there's that realization of, I'm kind of good at this, I'm going to move forward. And then when you reach your teen
years... And that's where you're poking each other with the foil
exactly,
at home?
Exactly.
Or you're in training sessions actually
right.
formally doing it?
Well, I think that I'm going to competitions. I went to competitions when I was younger, even at 9 years old, 8 years old, and I would win those competitions. And I was at practice and doing well there. There wasn't a second thought about it, just because I've seen Felicia do it, so I thought, you know, she does it, so I want to do it. So the focus very much was on more at the young age, especially trying to best my sister at something than anything else. And then, you know, at 14, I became one of the youngest world champions for under 17 age category. It's a trip to like go to Paris and then return to 8th grade after winning the world championship. But I became the first world champion for the United States.
You were a little popular when you came back.
No, actually not, because I was never there. I was always fencing. So the kids, you know, the teachers only really knew that I needed the homework, and then I came back and the homework was done. How'd you do? I won. Okay. But they had no idea the significance that I became the first world champion at 14 years old. But so it really was at a very young age, because not that I peaked at a very young age, but I saw success at competitions at a very young age. And a lot of that was due to the mentality, I think, instilled with having a sister who was already successful.
That's cool. So how many years was it that you were in training at a serious level before you got to making the Olympic team?
I made the Olympic team when I was 19 years old. It was 2000 Sydney Games. And like I said, I started at 6 years old. So I tell the kids when I speak to them that I, trained for 13 years. So when you watch the Olympic Games, the result of all that training is, 10 years, 13 years. I mean, it's a long process to make it to the Olympic Games. It isn't like Michael Phelps jumped in the pool and then the next day he's making the Olympic team. I mean, these are young athletes, but at the same time, they start at a very young age.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of
work.
Dedication. It's a lot of dedication, and it's a lot of dedication at a point that you don't want to do it. It's like, this one's a hard one, because parents always ask me, how much do I push the kid to get in the car and come to the fencing practice if they don't want to? So there's value in making a commitment and sticking to the commitment, and then doing incremental progress every day. And if you put them in the car, and then today they might not like it, or they get there and they enjoy it, or for a week they might not like it, but the next week they may, it's kind of like a give and take. You want to push them a little bit, but in the end, if they want to do it, they're going to put in the time and effort, and it's consistent effort over time that really makes the difference.
Do you think that fencing, like you talked about being like 13 years, 10 years, 13 years, is fencing different from the other athletes you meet from other sports in terms of sounds like your story. I don't know if a lot of fencing stories are like that, where at a young age, there's a sense of, hey, I can do this, versus whatever, basketball or track and field or other gymnastics, that athletes that you knew. In terms of, is that process in fencing a unique one, or is that a common story that at somewhat early ages, that elite level is sort of recognized, and you early on dream that I can really do this, versus plodding along for 8 or 10 years before even thinking I'm going to be elite?
Fencing's a strange sport in that you can be like me, a young phenom, and come out and do well, but you could also do fencing for a long term, not be so good, and then make teams. For example, the girl who I was always a competitor with, Erin Smart, she's always really good, but she's always kind of an alternate on the team when I was on the team with Felicia. But it turns out, she ended up making 2 Olympic teams and going until her late 20s, and made it, had a silver medal at the 2008 games. So it's really hard in fencing to tell how you're going to be at any given time. So when a kid walks in, that's the cool part about fencing, actually. When a kid walks in and they say, do they have talent? Yes, they're coordinated, they can do these things, but it's a skill that you can learn over a long period of time. I think maybe gymnastics, there's kind of a shelf life you have, but fencing, there really isn't. And recently I started training someone who is 63 years old. So fencing really is a different kind of animal, because you can use your physical and mental strengths and weaknesses to your advantage. And
At any point.
At any point. So for me to answer that question is very hard. You train for a long time, and I think it's really over a longer period of time you gain experience, because fencing really is about experience. It's about it's a chess game. So if this person plays this move, then what move do I play? And it's a huge mental game of being able to keep your composure, being able to think on your feet, being able to keep your mind focused on what you're doing. So a lot of that comes a little bit later. So people were surprised that, for me at least, that such a young person is doing so well. But now fencing has become much more athletic than it ever has, so the age is now also decreasing. But someone just retired from Valentina Vizzali, the most winning fencer of all time. She just retired and she was 40, I think, or something, or late 40s, or late 30s. So I think
Still
it's
elite.
really, yeah, she's still elite and still top of the world. So it's really hard to say how much you need as a fencer.
It certainly makes it a unique sport compared to lots of the others.
That are strange, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, you both. But no one's going to call it strange when you have a weapon.
That's true.
So
Go.
you were obviously really successful locally and nationally and internationally as a fencer, winning the 99 World Championships and making Olympic teams. But there's lots of athletes who are doing the same thing you're doing. They're working hard, they're athletic, they're talented. What do you think made it work for you? What got you there when someone else is working really hard, putting hours in the gym too? What were the differences that made you succeed at such a high level?
Well, that's a hard one, but I think that the differences are slight at the top level athletes, and at least for fencing, it's really about a mental edge. Really. I mean, just being able to focus on the strip and to be in the moment, to figure out, to problem solve in the moment. But I think for me personally, the difference between me and most of the athletes were that I did train harder. And all the days that someone didn't want to come in, I'm coming in. But
perseverance.
Perseverance. And I think consistent effort over time, that you're putting in the time and effort every day, even if you don't want to. But there are a lot of athletes that are out there. It's really hard to say, because it's a whole combination of things. It could be, my coach at the time, he not learned a secret, but he taught me something that was important for me. For example, I use my strength of being able to hit over the top to the back, which is a flick. And he knew at an early age I was going to be very strong, so he decided I'm going to have her
Work that one.
So it's really a combination of everything. My mom did research on what were good things for an athlete to eat, and she knew about herbal medicine, so I had a lot of injuries, so she would help work on that. My mom used to, before the 2000 games, every night help me by giving me a massage. like every night just kind of like helping me with that. Just learning how to do a sports massage. So like, it's a little thing.
You
It's
do
crazy
realize now all the kids are going to be asking for
massage. Right, but it's not just that, it's that I had a team, so mental piece is really important, but I had a team of people around me and supporting me that I really trusted.
It wasn't just you grinding it out.
It wasn't just me. You can't just have one person grinding it out. You need a coach that believes in you. I needed a personal trainer at Midtown, Dave Stat, he was positive. Every time I go to the gym, he's like, "You're amazing today, you did great, you're great, you know, and so I would go in the gym like, I'm great, you know.
Believe in yourself.
You believe in yourself. I mean, you watch the Muhammad Ali movies that they make of him. He's never not surrounded by 10 people, you know, so every athlete can never do it alone. It's just not possible. It's not possible. You have to have a good group and team around you.
That's all. Obviously the Olympics are here. They're starting in just a few days. Being a former Olympian, knowing what it feels like to be on that stage, knowing what it feels like to walk in that opening ceremony, obviously for most of us, we don't know what it feels like to be an Olympic athlete. When the Olympics come around every few years, and you're watching that opening ceremony, you're watching different sports compete, especially obviously fencing. What is it like being a former Olympian and now sitting in the passenger seat, sort of watching it from afar versus being on the floor doing it?
So the question is, do you want the truth or? So I think for some athletes, maybe it's hard to watch at first. I don't think I watched. I didn't make the 2018. I don't think I really watched 2008 and 2012. I think this is the first Olympics that I've been separated enough from it. It's been 8 years since I retired that I feel ready to watch the Olympics, and I've been hugely into it.
And you mean just fencing, or you mean even just
the
Olympics in general?
whole thing, the opening ceremonies, everything. You ask my husband, I was like, turn that off. I don't want to watch it. So I'll watch it now because I know how much joy it brings the kids that are here at the fencing club. I think owning this fencing club and then moving forward and being a teacher now and owning the club, really I realize the magic of the Olympic Games and what it can bring and what kind of inspiration it can bring to the kids at my fencing club and just generally when I do talks about the Olympic Games. But the truth is hard. I mean, you spend your whole life training, and I don't feel like I met the marks that I wanted to at the Olympic Games, and I missed, as an alternate by 2 points when they only took one person in 2004. I was ahead the whole time. So there's this whole thing, I didn't make the 2004 and 8 games, so I think for me, that was a tough piece. And so I think a lot of athletes do have that sort of, they call it Olympic depression a little bit, because you have this whole thing, you push towards that, so then how do you deal with the after effect? And for me, I came to terms by realizing how wonderful the sport can be for kids, and also how wonderful the Olympics can be. So I do, whenever I hear that anthem on NBC, like, I can't sing it, but I tear up a little bit, just because I know the significance of that, and how significant it was just to make it. So people, they're multiple-time Olympians, but like just to make the Olympic team and how much it was, and sometimes it's a sliver of a second, that you made the Olympic team, and you're walking into the ceremonies, that is unbelievable emotion right there.
Do you think that you, looking back on it, do you have a different appreciation for what it meant to be out there representing your country than you did when you were actually doing it, or was it so powerful when it happened? Was the reflection on that something that you took back and thought, did you realize what you had just done?
No, because when you're 19, you think, I'm going to make another Olympic team, and I'm going to do this, and I got to go to another competition. You're already training for the next competition. So I don't think, for me, the way I grew up competing, I never looked back, and I'm thinking, I got to go next tournament, and what can I do more? What's the next step? So I didn't really soak it in as much as I probably should have. But I think now when I look at pictures of the opening ceremonies, I realize the significance. But at the time when I'm in it, and when you're in it and going for it, and you're defined by that purpose, you don't pay attention to that.
You're task-oriented.
I'm task-oriented. I'm there. I have a job. I'm at the Olympics. I'm going. So I think that one advice that I give, that I have given to people who are making teams, is saying, take a moment to reflect, because this could be your only Olympics, or just take a moment. You've earned this. You've earned the right to be here. You are here. It's a big stage. You will perform, but take a minute to look around and congratulate yourself.
It's interesting that you say that. I remember, and I don't know the exact reference point, but I remember being around a coach who had said, really, what you're about to step on is basketball. You're about to step on this basketball court. Really appreciate how many people around the world wish that they could be stepping on a court playing right now.
Right.
And you're getting to do that. What a privilege it is. And also remember, you never know when it's going to be the last time you get to step on that court.
Right.
And taking that moment to step back and really take in and appreciate the privilege that you've had and the honor it's been and just the fun, the competition. And there's always this assumption there's going to be another day. And obviously in physical therapy, we're dealing with people all the time who sometimes that next day can't come for them.
Right.
So it's great hearing how you had to sit back and reflect on some of those same things too.
I think being 19, it's very difficult to think about that, but I think as I matured as an athlete, and even now, I realize the importance. If you want to be successful, you very much have to be in the moment, and you very much have to reflect on what's happening at the moment. I think all too often, just even owning a business and having 2 children, I'm like, okay, what next do I have to pack? What do I have to do now? What's the next thing I have to do? Rather than, I think that we could be more focused actually and be more successful if we were to take a breath and to just think, okay, I'm going to narrow the scope of what I'm doing right now, because I don't think we do that. I think we're
pulled in a lot of directions.
Pulled in so many directions, and I think that was the one thing that I learned from the Olympic Games too, was I've got to learn how to stay in this moment.
Awesome. So as an Olympic athlete, do you look at us common folk who haven't been there, and just as you hear people talk casually or flippantly about different things, is there a sense like, wow, you really don't understand what it takes for those people to get there, even though they got beaten, they were in last place? Is there a sense like we really don't understand what it took, even for the losers, the last place finishers, to get there?
I think that's the problem with just generally for us, because whenever I do a speech to kids about the Olympic Games, the first thing they ask me is, did you win? Did you win gold? And I tell them that Olympic athletes, when we get together for alumni, gatherings, I just went to an alumni gathering of Olympic athletes. We don't go up to each other and go, okay, so bronze, silver, or gold, otherwise I'm not talking to you.
You're not in the club.
Yeah, you're not in the club. Because the athletes that made it really understand how much it takes to get there and how much effort, and every day there's an effort to get there. And I think people, if they realize, I think that people need to start to equate what it's like to be at the Olympics with raising children. How much effort it takes every day and to be on point with your kids. Some days you've got to be on point no matter what. Your kids are getting up. You got to make sure they stay alive every day at minimum, So that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think people realize that training for the Olympics is like raising kids, like being there every day. And in the end, to say, your kid didn't go to Harvard, so obviously you're not a good parent, is the same thing that you would say to someone if you're saying, you obviously are not very good at what you do because you didn't win a gold medal. It's the same thing. So think about how much effort it takes for you to raise your children or your child, and then have someone at the end of it say, oh, they went to MCC, then RIT, or, they're doing a vocational skill, you must be a terrible, So, people fall in different categories, but it's not for a lack of trying and a lack of putting in all that effort.
And just having gotten there as a parent with kids, that survival is an incredible success.
Exactly. And I think people need to understand that. Young children don't understand that, because what we say to them all the time is, there's only the gold standard, if not gold platinum. You know what I mean? We just tell the kids that there's nothing but that. But I get the after effects of that. The kids walk in, and if they don't win right away, then that's it. So I tell people one of the values of the Olympic Games is excellence. And I talk to them about excellence, respect, and friendship. Those are the 3 values of the Olympic Games. Excellence isn't about the person standing at gold. But excellence is about asking yourself the question, can I get up today and do better than I did yesterday? Every day is a consistent effort. Am I going to be better today than I was yesterday? And it's the same thing with PT. can I get up today? Maybe it hurts a little bit, but can I do a little bit more, or do I need to pull back? You know, it's every day you analyze, am I moving slowly towards my goals and what I want to do?
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know one of your pet peeves in talks that we've had is just this concept as years and a decade or so has passed, year-round sports participation has become increasingly the norm, or whether it's parents or coaches or even athletes to each other. It feels like, if I'm not going at it every single day, if we're not always competing against the very best, we're going to fall behind. And there is some truth to that at times, but it also seems like we've gotten into this overtraining mode. There's even some studies out that look at injury rates and just that constancy of year-round, non-stop same movement patterns leading to overuse injuries more. And tell me a little bit about, I know you have a little bit of a different take on whether or not constant year-round is required. And not just for recreation and leisure, but even to be elite. Is that really what we need to do? Do we need to be 24/7, 12 months a year, 7 days a week?
Well, that's a great question. And so I thought about that a lot because I've had 3 knee surgeries and now I have an arthritic hip. Would I turn back time and say I wouldn't fence, in order not to have an arthritic hip, because you're helping me with that and I'm limping around? I think that I could have avoided knee surgery and this arthritic hip if my team of people, my mom, my coach, even my sister was part of that cohort, and knew that I could just take a break, or I think my father was the only one out of the group. My mom my father really was like, you need to take some time off. You need to step back a little bit. And I told him, you don't know what you're doing. You're not successful. You don't know what it means to be successful. And so I'm being fed this information at a very young age that the only way to be successful is to drive myself as hard as I can all the time, ad nauseum. It comes at a huge price. And I think that, yes, I would pay the price now, but the thing is, I think that with technology the way it is, the understanding, the information that's out there now about how to train smarter, there's so much more out there that you really do yourself a disservice just to say, I'm going to old school it and just like hit it hard every day. It's just not, that's not
sort
how.
Of Eastern Bloc.
Yeah, but that's not how it is anymore. I mean, the Cold War is over, and also like there's the internet. And then there's videos, like there's GoPro, there's all this stuff. There's stuff at your disposal that you can use to train smarter. And so for me, I don't subscribe to that. So a lot of my competitive kids, I tell them, okay, what do you want to do over the summer? I'm like, I'd like you to go outside. I'd like you to ride your bike. I'd like you to go see your friend. I'd like you not to sit on the couch, but I'd like you to stay active. So what happens by telling a kid, I want you to stay active, I want you to volunteer, I want you to go out, I want you to do this and this and this, go kayaking, do something else. What they do in return is they start cross-training, right? So if you tell them to do something else, not only are they having fun, recharging themselves and recharging their brain, they're cross-training at the same time. So you have to be smart about that. So your team has to be smart about that. And the kids need to be kids at some point. The Europeans, part of, I think, some of their success too, their fencing clubs close July and August. You can't go to their fencing clubs in July and August. And I used to always think, oh man, that's my edge over them. But, Valentina Vizzali, she fenced till she was in her late 30s. I would love to fence, but I have a hip injury. So, I think it's really important to sit back and be more understanding of what's happening in your body. And also, just to, I've told you this, like read the manual. It's like the iPad, the iPhone you have needs to be charged every once in a while. It's the same for your body. Your body's the same thing. Your body needs to be recharged. Your mind needs to be recharged. So people don't understand how much actually happens in the rest period. And it doesn't have to just be rest where I'm laying on the couch. I think people underestimate the power of what rest period can do. Watching video with a coach, just watching video of fencing. That's what I have the kids do. Just anything, like working on sports psychology. Maybe I'm going to do some more cross-training, different kinds of weights, get in the pool or something else.
It's an active rest versus a passive just sitting around.
Exactly. So you need your mind going. Even like, go and read a book about something else. It might inspire you, and it might get your brain going. So I think for me, the approach has to be very balanced, and I think part of the problem is that you really need to have a really good coach, and you really need to have good people surrounding you to help you through that, so that the kid, when they have the reaction like I did, you don't know what success is about, you don't know whatever, but the coach has a lot of power. So, being able to say, not just go home and rest. I mean, that's great. Go home, watch a video for an hour, focus your athlete, go home, watch
It's very
it for a
difficult
while.
for athletes who aren't being driven by the passion of the parent, but truly have that inner desire. They love it. If you weren't
Right.
practicing, I'd be out in the yard playing. I'd be
Right.
with my foil, I'd be with my sister, we'd be going at it.
Right,
Who have that love to
Right.
be able to step back and think that they're not missing out on something, but having that wise perspective in the background and
Right.
from more than one person telling them,
Right.
you're not going to lose out by taking a little time off is so valuable. Coaches and parents out there just really, you don't understand how valuable what Iris just shared is, that there's so much these days, and oftentimes it is parents who are in more traditional sports, team sports with soccer and basketball and all these other team-based sports we're getting our kids lots of opportunities, but in the process, we're driving them into the things that Iris is talking about, which is constant overtraining, thinking the only way to get better and to get an advantage and to get to the top, if that's the goal, to get a scholarship or play long-term, is that you've got to be grinding away. And as she said, it takes a toll on your body. And there's real value in cross-training and in active resting leading away. It's so cool to hear you say that, because I think a lot of people think, sort of like what you said, yeah, you're telling me that, but what Olympics have you been to?
Right.
What D1 scholarship did you have? And if the
Right.
coach or the parent or whoever doesn't come from a position of authority from that, they sort of downplay it. But boy, when you hear an Olympian tell you it doesn't need to be constant, and cross-training is valuable, and rest and active rest and
Right.
mental imagery are valuable,
Right.
that's powerful.
It's very powerful, because your body is one piece, the mind is another. And if the mind doesn't have a chance to just step back and gain perspective, then you run the athlete. You have a huge problem. The athlete's going to run into a wall at some point. So you want them to be going for a long term. You want this athlete to continue to give back. It's like your car, right? You want to keep running your car, but if you don't bring it in for oil change or maintenance, it's not going to run for you. It's the same thing. The body and mind will do what you want it to do, and you can push it to an extreme. But why push it to the extreme every day if you can train smarter? And you have to do your due diligence and research. It's the same thing. Ask yourself, why are people doing that? Not just stepping out and just doing it. It's the same thing. I resisted a very long time to have 4-year-olds start fencing because now programs start at 4. I mean, I lose kids at 4 years old, which is crazy because parents are looking to start
Competing in some other sport.
Yes, and so they're looking to have the kids be, elite at like 4 or 5, and that's not, my kid is 4 and she tries a little fencing, but it's for fun. Things are for fun. She goes out and she kind of, has a little fun, and I think we don't realize how much kids learn in sports through just having fun. I doubt Pele, like at 6, was like kicking the ball around doing drills. I think he was like outside playing with his friends, just like laughing and just playing. So, I mean, that's part
Which
of
you were when you were poking Felicia.
Yeah, well, we didn't really have practice. I mean, at 6 years old, we were having fun. We were playing games. That's why I liked it. We were playing games, and so, I mean, that's part of the issue, is that I think people start way too soon training kids at like 6 to be an Olympic athlete or D1 scholarship athlete. And so, I run my program that way. And maybe my kid at 10 years old isn't going to win, the national championships, but I know over the long term I'm going to have a well-rounded kid who's going to be good in academics, they're going to be great in fencing, they're going to enjoy themselves, they're going to have friends. And then with that, the diligence and the training that they do on their own, and if they like it, they're going to do more and more on their own. And the studies do show, and there's a book called Peak that really talks about how a lot of this edge that we talked about comes from diligent practice on your own. Like going home and saying to yourself, if I really want to be good, I'm going to watch some video, and not having the coach constantly prompt you. I'm not saying to overtrain, but I'm saying if you love something and you're having fun with it, you'll be good at it. You will.
I think it's awesome. Two things. One is about coaches and parents, don't rob your kids of the fun of their sport. It was so neat to hear you talk about how playing and laughing and just having fun with Felicia, sort of for Iris, it led down the path to becoming great someday.
Right.
But it didn't start by a grinding, organized, structured,
Right.
overly serious process. You
Right.
kept your passion for what you did, and I think so often these days we get so serious and so organized so early with structured coaching as not that it's bad, it's awesome, but it becomes the only interaction you have with the sport,
Right.
that it robs them of the fun and passion too early.
Right. Ask yourself why. Why are you doing this? Why is the coach having them run drills or suicides at like 7 or 8? Ask yourself why. Before you just let the coach say, I'm sure the gymnastics has lots of Russian coaches, with the Russian accent, you should do it this way. This is how we're doing it for years. Okay, great, but ask yourself why, because every kid is different. Just because the Russian programmer, taking a ton of kids and just molding them into one thing is one thing, but having your kid be the special and unique thing, and then pushing them into a mold, ask yourself why. As a parent, ask yourself why those things are happening, and then question.
I really like the tie-in that you had from that book about diligent practice and physical therapy. We see this happen all the time, that there's this learning curve early on where we're not going to expect perfection.
Right.
We increasingly know that. We'll increasingly get a little more demanding with the exercises, but in sport, that it's the same way. Is a concept of diligent practice, and I think so often these days our athletes will put in the reps, put in the time and the hours, but sometimes it's at a lot of subpar performance, and you might be able to take a 2-hour practice and you probably could have done it in 25 minutes.
Right.
And done diligent focus. For those who are seriously trying to improve, we're not trying to hold people back from being elite,
Right.
but if you're going to go that route, one of the problems is overvaluing yourself. And sometimes that's because you're just counting the clock or counting the number of reps, getting things in that aren't diligent. They're not. Another way that someone has said it is, it's not practice makes perfect. It's perfect practice makes perfect. And just talk a little bit more about that concept of diligent practice and how that's different from just sort of run-of-the-mill practice sessions and opening up a book or going on the internet and finding 4,000 drills to do for somebody.
Right. So that's the thing, is I think that we don't understand. So we have this body, but the mind drives the body. So if the mind isn't totally engaged and focused in on the task, it's not going to imprint and compute into the system as much. So I used to think that. So, for example, someone said the other day, if you really want to get stronger in the gym, put your iPod away. Put your iPod away. Because you think that it's driving you harder by putting music in your ears, doing a lift or something like that. But it's not, you have to fully engage the mind in order for the body to respond. And so one of the things the trainer says is put your iPod away, or put your music away, because you really want to be engaged. The only way you're engaged is if you care. And so that's part of it too, right? So that love feeds into caring, which feeds into the mind to tell yourself, let's focus on this task because we want to do it, we like it. And so the task is done and focused. And that's why I tell the kids, or the parents too, if your kid is being forced in the car to come here, it's just not going to work. Even if their body was here for 2 hours, it's just not going to work. They're never going to be good. Good to their potential.
Right.
They're not going to reach their potential unless they go, all right, I want to get in the car, and even though this is hard, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to learn something. And they have to be present and engaged in practice. And that's why also, again, it comes full circle with the rest. So if your brain and your body are tired, you will not imprint the information into your body and brain that you need to. It becomes a wasted time and effort. Because you come in, your mind isn't into it, your body isn't into it. So for fencing, if you move your hand just even a little bit, it makes a big difference, right? So that, I think, again, what made me very good too is that the precision is and the focus that it took that my coach forced.
You were doing diligent practice before they wrote the book.
Yeah, before they wrote the book. But they, everyone, even the musicians, they go home and they practice. And if the coach says, don't move your hand to, or fencing subtleties in the details. But you can't get the subtlety and details if you're tired, if you're not engaged, if you don't care, if you don't love it. So that's the difference between someone walking in and just fencing and someone who wants to train.
So for those of the kids in your sport and fencing at the club here who are in that pushing toward elite, trying to be the best, not just recreational sort of,
right.
I want to learn fencing and have fun, and that side's obviously awesome, but for those who are really working toward it, you talked about being fully present.
Right.
Is that something that you feel like is, as an athlete and an elite athlete and all the elite athletes you've known, is that something that elite athletes sort of just own, or is that something that partly gets learned or can be coached?
The staying present in the moment.
Yeah, learning how to even just get present. Staying is the second part, right? But even just walking in and figuring out, how do I be present here, that the diligence going on can take its toll on me versus it sort of flies over my head, even though there's opportunity to learn and grow, but I'm sort of not here fully.
So that's where a good coach comes in, right? So at a very young age, you don't really understand what it means to be in the moment. So say we start, like me, I'm 6 to 10, I'm like all over, there's pictures of me and video of me like I'm all over the place. But, I'm having fun. But the coach, when they work with you, they're able to kind of mix the vegetables with the good stuff, the stuff you really want to eat. You know what I mean? So they're trying to focus you in a way.
Not that vegetables aren't
I like vegetables. But they are teaching you how to stay in the moment through the drills and the things that they're giving you, right? So you're, like, for example, when you do the work with me at PT, you're not explaining all that background behind. You're giving me the exercise and kind of telling me, directing me a little bit, but you understand all that background. So, if I wanted to pursue physical therapy or wanted to do that, then you would give me some of that background and get deeper. It's the same thing with when you start a kid or even someone who's a beginner. You don't give them all that background. You just give them enough, and then you give them enough to focus them at the moment for what they want to do, and then later on, they understand what it is to be in the moment. For fencers and for competitors in general, I think that happens with repetitive competition. I think that if you're really good at competition, you sort of quote-unquote get into the zone accidentally sometimes. And then as you become more of an elite athlete and you do more competitions, you learn how to get more organized so you get into that quote-unquote zone more often. So you're able to control and challenge it. But there's a very long period of time before that really happens. A lot of what helped me to do it was meditation. And also, I believe very strongly, and some athletes and coaches don't, very strongly in sports psychology. I didn't love every sports psychologist. Some of it I thought was a little bit mumbo-jumbo, but there are very specific and well-known techniques to get people into the zone. Yeah. To physically relax. I would do some relaxation techniques in between matches that would help my heart rate come down. There's a physiological response and then the brain response. So there are things that you can do and things you can do in your off time to learn, that can be helpful in the long term to get you into that mental zone if you want to learn how to control it at a very, at a younger age.
We really do spend so much time on all the physical things. What's the coolest strength training drill? Are you holding a kettlebell or a tube or a barbell? And we really have beaten to death. It's cool, all the creative ways to train physically, but it really is, until you get to, I think, oftentimes a more elite level, an area that is really underutilized in most team sports and all sports at youth levels. We need more sports psychologists helping leagues and different programs to figure out how it is to help these kids do it the right way.
We have a sports psychologist on staff, and we've been toying with many different things. And Dr. Doug Rayner works at Geneseo, and he does work with our younger kids, and it's much harder for them to understand the concepts because they just don't understand that, and for them it's still fun. So we play around with at what age that helps. And you know what? It's not going to help every kid, what it will do is the athlete that is diligent, the athlete that does want to be elite, the athlete that wants to get ahead, it does help them. It gives them...
Or just even be their best.
Or to
Even
be their
if it's not
best. Right. Even if, well, elite for me is being their best.
Right.
You know, not all my kids are going to make an Olympic team.
Right.
Not all of them are going to make NCAA teams, but what they are going to do is, a lot of my kids walk in and they don't feel like they're athletes, but if they can leave here and feel like I'm an athlete, I feel good about myself, they have achieved an elite status. You know,
That's
so
powerful.
so we all raise ourselves to that level, and I always try to raise that bar for the kids so that no matter what, they're trying their best. You know, either they're trying to make a team or they're trying to just come more consistently to the recreational class, or, you know, any bar. But need a challenge. But the sports psychology will make a difference for some, or just the mental work generally will make a good, will make it give you an edge if you're already there.
Right.
If you do understand a little bit of it. Be very aware as a coach and be smart. So as a parent, you're thinking, making sure, what kind of background does this coach have? Are they really looking out for the, you know, cross-training piece for my kid? Or is that something that I can ask, you know, Mike to help me with? Or is that something I can ask someone else? And then how do I integrate everyone together? It's a team. I mean, we have everyone meet together. It's a team effort. So I think that parents, some even good parents who kind of stay hands-off a good amount of time, I think don't realize how much of an impact they can make just by being a coordinator or communicator or finding people that can give you the right information. So,
Stuff you couldn't ignore things, right?
no, I had 3 knee surgeries. So, but the problem is I had 3 knee surgeries because I kept ignoring it. Part of the problem was,
That's a great point.
yeah. So my parents, my mom is Chinese, and so she's very much a tiger mom, quote unquote. So for her, more was better, right? She knows that. So the problem is that my coach too thought more was better. So nobody was doing
The balance
out, and you know, that part came much later when I was like, all right, I really can't move. So, and then I have to do the research and the thought process.
Yeah.
So.
Tough for athletes to obviously figure out when's that transition when they have to, you know, at a more elite level, are you increasingly internalizing having to be the one who reads it, who says, look, we really got to stop? Or are there more people that are helping you saying, look, Felicia, Iris, Bob, Jim, you've taken this too far. You really gotta.
Yeah.
You gotta stop. We've got to stop you.
That's hard because even in
Because
athlete
they're all
knows,
thinking like, you got so much time here. We got to get ready
Yeah.
for this competition.
right, and then also like mentally too. If you feel like, well, one shirt I had was I practice while you sleep, so that's the mentality everyone has. So if you feel like I haven't practiced one day and then Jane practiced today, I'm going to be that much, you know. But I think that's when it really comes into play, where you need to have a very focused and balanced team that can really push you forward and drive you forward by being organized. I mean, there's a lot to be said about doing a chart of periodization. Okay, we're getting ready, we're targeting this tournament. We want this many, lessons and this many training sessions, this many things. And if that doesn't happen, then how do we do it? And I don't think people realize how much you can do also doing work on sports psychology, work on mental work. I mean, that piece is always kind of left out. There's a ton of video work you can do now that we never had before that can really help you, because they say like just exercising your mind a lot of times. And you talk about
You mean
too,
watching technique and
watching
skill
technique
training?
and skill training can be almost or just as effective as physically going out there and doing it. But you have to trust your team, and you have to put something together and find people that can give you some advice. And really, if you want to do it as with anything, like even when you get an iPhone, right? So you get an iPhone and you read the manual. You know, it's the same thing. There's a manual for this, and then you have to just, maybe sometimes you have to dig a little deeper.
Were you, not necessarily your own story, but did you have, or people who, because things are so more well-rounded these days, that back in the day, it was just sort of this oversimplistic rah-rah, push hard versus the understanding of the totality of you as an athlete? And again, I don't want you to incriminate it, but I'm saying for, do you think that went on, that it got to be sort of like, push hard, you can do it, and there wasn't the sensitivity of really thinking and understanding it?
Well, the 1980s, right? So I started in 1987 and really came to light in 1990. So we weren't really using any of these techniques. There wasn't GoPro cameras. There weren't any of that. And the coaches that coached me beforehand were all Bella Caroli coaches, especially in this European sport. So there was no other mentality. And we were trying to break barriers in U.S. fencing. So there was no choice but to sacrifice yourself at the stake. So there was nothing but that, which comes with its own post consequences. But now, you can practice so much smarter now. There are like
not beat yourself down.
Yeah, so they're average athletes now, not average, but like people who work a 9-to-5 job, but can be an upper level triathlete because they have access to a GoPro camera. They have access to all this technology and all these things that athletes, it's not proprietary information anymore, so you have to train smarter. That's why I said read the manual, so.
The other thing will be, for those interested in fencing, good sites, any sites that you use. And then are there commonalities that you find in people young or old that gravitate, tend to enjoy fencing?
Go.
So one of the things that is near and dear to our heart as physical therapists, sports physical therapy, is just this balance of injury, and obviously as an athlete you have to push yourself. There's a bit of a survival of the fittest, if you will, that has to occur for you to get to elite level. But there's also that balance of honoring your body and knowing that besides your mental and sports psychology capacities and diligent practice and understanding technique, there's a physical ability your body has to be able to perform to get to an elite level. How hard is it, and how do you get through this process, and what would you recommend for athletes in terms of understanding that they can't continue to disrespect their body with injury, but there is some level of toughness you have to keep persevering and balancing out those two things in terms of not letting injury get too far ahead of you?
I think that's a little bit easier sometimes when you're a more elite athlete because you are very, very in tune with your body. Even like if I ate a chip, I know what the difference it makes when I fence, So I think that for younger athletes, it's a little bit harder to tell. And so I think in the athletes that we're really talking about are the ones that are developing. I think it's important to voice when you have an injury or an issue, and then the coach can really assess what's happening at the time. So when I say that, what I mean is that there's some implicit trust there with the coach. And there's a team effort that goes with these, with training a kid. So the coach is there. I have several coaches who watch over the kids, who know how they perform every day, to notice, are you having an injury? Let's talk about it. I do also have a sports trainer on staff, so I trust her to say, please evaluate whether or not they can actually, because there are kids who come in like the engagement. So the kids that are engaged, they are the ones you have to watch out for because they won't tell you. The kids that aren't engaged will say, this hurts. And you'll say, get on guard and fence. So I think you have to be very wary of the kids that really drive themselves. The ones that really want to get at it and go forward. You have to be very diligent about knowing what it is and trusting other people to kind of make an evaluation. So having a trainer, having a physical therapist evaluate, having the coach listen to the physical therapist and to trust the physical therapist to talk to them. When I was injured, I always had Bucky talk to the physical therapist, what can she do? What can't she do? And then responding from there. Having the coach realize, is this athlete very disappointed right now? Are they, is there a mental spiral that's going downwards? How do I lift them up? Not like, oh, just sit here with some ice. Every time someone has an issue, you need them to relax. You have to focus the athlete. Sit here, watch some video. Sit here, watch this kid. Ice, and then while you're icing, read this article.
Do something purposeful.
Do something purposeful so their mind isn't on it, so they don't just sit here and be like, all I'm doing is sitting out during practice. So it really is trust of the coach, the physical therapist, a trainer that's on the floor. Also trust that you as a parent know, like, oh, my kid really is injured because Sally doesn't usually complain.
That's an awesome point.
So you have to trust yourself as a parent to say, this doesn't feel right. Because as a parent right here, like, that really doesn't feel right. Or they can suck it up and go back on the floor. So it really is an honest conversation with yourself and with the people that surround the kid. Like I said, it's really the kids that drive themselves as the biggest issue, because they're the ones that are never going to tell you, and they're the ones that, if they get injured for too long and step out for too long, are going to go into a depressive cycle.
Good advice. So I certainly I want to move on to your club. What kind of, are there some particular sites that you recommend? There's people who want to learn how to fence or get more information about it. Could you name the top 1 or 2 or 3 places someone might go on the web?
Well, rock fencing, rocfencing.com is our website. usfencing.org is a good place, but right now it's so great because the Olympics are on, so there are times to view fencing live. So if you go on NBCOlympicSports.com, I think, just Google it too, there's a whole schedule of watching fencing live. But really, if you want to try fencing, we have twice a month intro classes, or just call the fencing club to see if this.
What's your number here?
It's 654-6047 with the 585 area code.
Awesome.
But also we're at a lot of different rec centers as well. We're starting some after-school programs at French Road and some other ones. But it's always good to start with a call and just say, my kid, or I'm interested. I have a lot of adults. I have a fitness and fencing class now that's really just like agility and fitness, and then sprinkled with a little bit of fencing is in that as well, for people that just want to stay in shape but don't want to get on a treadmill.
So are there certain things, characteristics that you find that tend to run across ages and guys versus girls, in terms of things that people who end up loving fencing tend to have certain qualities about them?
So a lot of the fencers I have are top in their class. I think that people who are really want to be mentally engaged in the strategy of fencing really get on and love it. I think people who are willing to put in the work into a skill, at first you are really clunky and it's kind of chaotic at first because someone is moving at you with a weapon and you're kind of trying to figure it out. So I think people who are also open-minded to being a little bit clumsy at first, that really does make a difference, because adults, especially if they start anything, want to be perfect right away, because apparently when we're adults we have to be perfect at everything. And there's also kids who have that same mentality, that they just want to be perfect. So I think that, I think first you have the mentality of a fencer. If you're smart, like strategy, enjoy that piece. You also enjoy being physically active, don't mind sweating, and don't mind being a little clunky at first, So I think when you try anything new, you have to be pretty open-minded, so.
What are the things that you feel like first drew you, that you love about fencing the most?
Sword. I got to stab other people with a weapon. With a blunted weapon. I think for me I was a kid who loved swords, and I was pretty aggressive about it. So I loved it. I loved that I could make the light go off, and I could come forward and just hit you in the chest with the foil. I really loved it. I loved the way the weapon felt. So, a lot of times a lot of boys will come in because, parents will say, well, they love to be in the backyard with a sword. But that's actually false, because kids who love to be in the backyard with swords a lot of times just like to be in the backyard with a sword. But some people who are a little bit more focused tend to like fencing, because they're really focused on the target. They like some other things about it.
Precision to it.
Precision to it. So the precise and the skill, precision it takes, and the time it takes to learn how to be a good fencer. So a lot of times, even a kid who loves Star Wars, they get kind of disenchanted because, I have to learn footwork. I've got to learn the technique. I've got to learn this. So it's a little bit tough sometimes if someone just likes to be in the backyard with swords. But I love the sword. I love the precision. I love being able to take this point and make it hit somewhere that I wanted to go.
What did you find
controlling,
most
probably, right?
challenging about fencing? That was the hardest thing that didn't maybe match your interests or physical athleticism?
It's hard to say. I really loved all the games. I loved the kids that were in the class. I just loved everything about it. I danced my way and laughed my way through class. So I loved it so much, and I got to spend time with my sister. So I think for me, there wasn't a whole lot that I didn't like. Because I also am someone who really likes training too. I love putting in those hours, and I love training, and I love working hard. So I have this very, very intensive work ethic that I've had since I was a little kid. So for me, there wasn't a whole lot that I felt was a detractor at all. I was like, okay, I can work at stabbing someone a little more accurately, okay, you know. So for me, it was a perfect fit, and obviously, it was a
Worked out
perfect fit, yeah.
A neat thing that you said about being with your sister for people out there who are interested in fencing is definitely think about asking your friends to come.
Yes.
Some people might be thinking, hey, I don't know if I want to come and start this new thing by myself. Ask your neighbor, your friend, a classmate, a teammate to do
Absolutely.
something in the off-season. Cool opportunity for a different sport. We are so blessed at Peak Performance to have Iris be one of our friends. And she's a hard worker. And we could sit here and talk for hours. I just love all the wisdom that you shared with us. But I'd really encourage you to check out, tell me the website again.
Rockfencing.com.
Rockfencing.com, and give Iris a call if you're interested. My wife is very interested in seeing me get poked with a sword. So I think we're going to end with a little demo.
Still mine, because
Because
I
you
block
got me
last. I block last. No, we hit at the same time. So I block last, and then we hit together. But now, like, say for example, you attack me, and I just stick my arm out, and we hit at the same time. That's yours, because you attacked me, and all I did
It
was
was
just stick.
intentional. So you got to be really
Yeah.
on top of the rep.
Yeah, you have to be very. And you can start. This is the back line that warns you that you're almost to the end. This is the guard line, so you can see right here is the guard line. And then, yeah, that's in guard, perfect. And then. You have a longer reach than me. But you have to hit like this, and then when you hold it, yeah, good. So when you hold it, you want to just wait. No, okay. Okay. But it's this foam sword. So you can go to my stomach. So we start from here, and then at the very beginning of a match, you salute the partner like this, just at the very beginning. And then I'll say ready, you say fence. Ready?
Fence.
So we hit each other.
I didn't actually win, did I?
We'll go one more touch. So you start over, back at your line. Ready?
Fence. I just use Iris as a
You just used my move.
I got it first. I'm down.
That was really good.
Iris,
All right.
that was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.